until I attended a drawing workshop at Disneyland. I always considered drawing to be a childish thing. I know there's some irony there, but Disney does bring out the kid in us all. We were walking off lunch when we passed the sign, "Learn to draw Donald Duck with a real Disney animator." It made sense to let our stomachs settle before riding Big Thunder Mountain. It was also around 86 degrees, so an air-conditioned studio was quite appealing. Turns out I love to draw. When we got home, Elle invested in some materials and started drawing things around the apartment. As I improved, it evolved into landscapes. Drawing became my biggest passion, though something I hadn't attempted was the human body. I asked some friends if they would pose, but they were too shy, so I looked online for life drawing classes, but the nearest I could find was some 3-hour drive away. After talking about it with a friend, she had an idea. "How much is that class, Isaac?" $50 an hour. "So why don't you advertise for a model for like $40 an hour? I think that's reasonable." It was something I hadn't considered. I'd also have complete control over poses. "You're a genius. That's if anyone is interested," she said. "How many people do you think are willing to come to a stranger's apartment to be drawn?" "A lot, it turns out." I put an ad on Craigslist seeking a life model. I had over 30 responses. After filtering the trolls and creeps, I arranged to meet Selena, a 35-year-old experienced life model, in a local bar. She was happy to pose for me. She came to my apartment the following week. I attached a large white sheet to a wall in my living room as a makeshift backdrop. "You're probably used to a more professional studio setup," I said. "Not at all," she said. "It does exactly what it says on the tin." As she started to undress, I didn't know where to look. It was quite a surreal moment in more ways than one. "Are you okay, Isaac?" she asked. "I'll be honest," I said. "This is the first time I've seen a naked woman in person." She chuckled. "Say no more. Would you like me to take the lead?" "I would appreciate it, thanks." She held various poses while I sketched her with charcoal. By the end of the hour, it didn't feel strange at all. Ever the professional, she put me at ease. Selena came by once a week for the couple of months that followed. She was very encouraging and complimented my work. In that time, I invested in a proper backdrop, having enjoyed the experience and intending on continuing for as long as my passion for drawing remained. One week, she dropped some bad news. "This will be the last time I can visit," she said. "I'm moving away, kind of a last-minute thing." "Oh no," I said. "Is it a positive move? Is everything okay?" "Yes, it's definitely for a good reason." "Well, unhappy for you. I'll miss this, though." "Me too," she said. "That you'll find someone else." I nodded. "You'll always be my first time." She laughed. "If you're interested, I have someone in mind. Can I give him your number? If you recommend him, then sure. He's also very easy on the eyes." She winked. As much as I'd miss Selena, I liked the idea of having a different body type to draw. I used the bathroom as she got dressed after our session. When I returned, she was holding a tissue to her hand. I could see blood. "What happened?" I asked. "My darn pocket mirror shattered in my bag," she grimaced. "Ouch, you poor thing. I'll grab a towel." "No need," she said. "It's only a scratch, really. Fortunately, I had some bandages in my drawer of random stuff." "It more than a scratch," I said as I helped her clean it. There was a deep wound on her palm. "I think you should go to the ER. You're sweet, Isaac, but a little dramatic." We hugged goodbye. It felt strange that it was potentially the last time I'd see her, and wished it hadn't ended that way. A week or so later, I had a text message from an unknown number. He introduced himself as Alex and said he was interested in modeling. We arranged to meet in a bar one evening. I only had a physical description to go on, but he stuck out from the crowd. He was the only one wearing shades. His hair was just long enough to tuck behind his ears, and so lustrous he could do shampoo commercials. I put him at around 30. "Alex, I'm Isaac." I shook his hand. "What are you drinking?" "I'm not much of a drinker, to be honest," he said. "Soda, juice?" He shook his head. "Nothing for me, thanks." "Fair enough, man," I said, getting a Corona for myself. Then we went and sat in a booth. "So, you know Selena from life modeling?" "No," he said. "They work together occasionally." "Ah, but not modeling." He shook his head. "I've never done it before." I assumed that's why Selena set this up. I mentioned it was something I'd be interested in myself. You gotta try new things in life, right? Otherwise it's dull. "I agree," I said, though I hastened to add, "I'm not promising excitement. You'll just be required to pose for around 15 minutes, then change position, rinse, and repeat for an hour or so, and you just draw me." He asked, Exactly, make it. Not if you're uncomfortable with that, but ideally wearing as little as possible. Saying that out loud sounds weird. I'm not a creep. The whole point is that I want to experience drawing the human body and all its intricacies. I have no problem being naked, he said. I'm not embarrassed of my body. I could tell he had a great physique, but there was one thing that could be a deal breaker. Weird question, but can I see your eyes? The eyes are the window to the soul. His shades hid that all-important feature. Sure, he said, leaning over the table and lifting his shades. They were at first an intense black, though his pupils constricted to reveal shimmering blue-green irises. I was mesmerized. Any good? He asked, lowering the shades and interrupting an extended silence. I cleared my throat. Why, yeah, yes, absolutely. I felt my face heat up. Then I joined him as he let out a laugh. When do you want me? A few nights later, Alex stood at my apartment door. He was still wearing the shades. A little pretentious, perhaps, but he looked good. Nice place, he said, looking around. It's not much, but it's home. Great view, though. I was on the 5th floor overlooking a park. I got lucky as the other side of the building overlooks a parking garage. Alex approached my A3 drawing pad, which was perched on an easel. The last drawing of Selena was on the front page. She was turned to the side, looking over her shoulder with an intense expression, long hair cascading down to her buttocks, an arm covering her breasts. Isaac, this is incredible. She looks like a goddess. Thank you, I said proudly. She really inspired me. I can tell. It looks just like her. I can't wait to see what you do with me. With that, he started removing his clothes. I was glad that I didn't have to awkwardly mention that he needed to strip off. So, are the shades your signature? I asked, preparing a fresh page. You mean, are you always this much of a douche? He teased. Not at all, I laughed. They suit you. Thanks. It's actually due to light sensitivity. It can get a bit uncomfortable under bright lights. I can dim them, I said. Maybe light a few candles instead. It's fine. I can deal with it for an hour or so. I'm gonna do that anyway, I said. Candlelight illuminates the body in a completely different way. I'm intrigued about that perspective. I dimmed the lights and lit some candles around the room. Alex removed his shades and stood in a pair of white CK briefs. His body was like an Italian sculpture. Even with mood lighting, his sparkling eyes popped. Attractive is an understatement. On or off? He asked, his thumbs hooked into the waistband. Leave them on for now, I said, placing a chair in front of the backdrop. Just sit and relax. Try a few different positions until you feel comfortable. He stretched a bit, then propped one arm up on the back of the chair, resting the other on his thigh. How's this? Do you think you can hold that pose for the next 15 minutes? Sure, he said. Then it's perfect to start. Look in my direction, but not directly at me. Focus on something over my shoulder. I began to draw with charcoal, having only experienced drawing Selena. At that point, chest hair was a new challenge. 2. Alex remained completely still. He didn't shift or indicate that he was uncomfortable at all. Are you sure you haven't done this before? I asked. Pretty sure, he said. Why do you ask? I guess you just look so natural. I admire your confidence. You're not confident, he asked. Not take my clothes off and pose for a complete stranger. Confident, I laughed. I doubt Michelangelo would have been inspired by this. You look fine from over here, he smiled, turning his head slightly. I felt myself blush and chuckled. Hey, don't move. Sorry, very unprofessional, he said, returning to his previous position. When I was happy with what I had, I asked him to pose standing, but this time from behind. How's this? He asked. When I turned back, he was holding a pose, though he'd removed his briefs. Cheeky, I laughed. He grinned. I felt like I wasn't getting the complete life model experience. Honestly, this is great if you're comfortable. The light and shadows framed the contours of his shoulders, back and butt perfectly. I think one more pose from the front, I said when I was finished. Is that okay? Absolutely, he said, turning around. He was well and truly blessed in all departments, it seemed. I got a bit flustered. You decide on a pose, I said. I'll work with whatever feels right for you. He put one hand on his chest and the other over his head. I started to draw the outline of his body. Every time I caught his eyes, they were focused intensely on me. I found myself getting lost in them. They were so mysterious and alluring. What do you see? He asked. Huh, I said, snapping out of a daze. Tell me what you see. I was confused. I see an attractive man. What else? Who is well hung. Is that what you want to hear? Do you see a savior? What? His eyes were fixed on mine, unflinching. Do you see a savior? I laughed uncomfortably. I think we can call it a day, Narcissus. Look at me, he commanded. His hands were no longer on his body. His arms were outstretched, palms up, as if he was summoning something. His blue-green eyes swirled like an ocean, both beautiful and frightening. I couldn't look away. I don't feel so good, I said. Look closer, he smiled. There was something else, something dangerous. Please, Alex, I said, my head spinning. I want you to go now. You see me? He said. In a flash, his eyes were black and his teeth were jagged. His skin was deathly pale, rivers of deep blue veins visible beneath. My heart thudded in my ears, but there was also the sound of distant screams. Alex, I am your savior, he yelled, demonic. I collapsed, blacking out momentarily. When I focused, he was no longer standing in front of me. He was fully clothed, crouched on the floor, rummaging through sheets of paper. There were drawings scattered everywhere. The candles were almost stubs, as if they'd been burning for hours. What was that? I said, breathing heavily. He held up a sheet of paper, admiring it. You have definitely found your calling. This is brilliant work. I don't understand, I said, looking at some of the drawings around me. They depicted ugly things. People hanging from their ankles, bleeding out over troughs. Humanoids tearing the skin from children. Mountains of bones lining the streets under a dark sky. I pushed them away from me. I didn't draw these. But you did, Isaac, he said, approaching me with the drawing. You should be proud of them all, but this one is very special. It depicted a man and woman standing before a worshipping crowd. The man was him, and I recognized the woman instantly. Selena, my queen. He smiled. He flipped the drawing to reveal a dark smear on the back, resembling a crude handprint. This is her mark. Oh my God, is all I could say as I had a flashback to her bleeding hand. I need your mark too, Isaac, he said, grabbing my wrist. I went into panic mode as I tried to pull away, but he was strong. The thumbnail of his other hand grew into a point. He pushed it into my palm and made a deep incision, making me scream in pain. Then he pressed my hand onto the back of the drawing. So it shall be, he said, pulling my hand to his mouth. I squirmed as I felt his tongue penetrate the wound. When he let me go, I recoiled, my whole body trembling. You can keep the $40, he smiled with bloody teeth, rolling up the drawing. We'll call this payment. Alex walked to the window and pushed it open, looking over his shoulder. At the end of days, you will be spared. He put on his shades and leapt. When I eventually braved looking out of the window, there was no sign of him. I can't explain it, but I counted 23 drawings that I have no recollection of. All of them depicted scenes of torture and devastation. Recently, a family of 4 from my neighborhood were found dead in their home. Details weren't released to the public, but I have a friend in local law enforcement who said it was the most disturbing thing our town had experienced. The parents had been drained of blood, and the children had some skin removed. They also mentioned that a charcoal drawing was found at the scene, depicting the family's gruesome end. I had such a drawing. I couldn't find it. The original 23 drawings, which I shoved into the closet, had dropped to 19. I took them to the beach late one night, doused them in lighter fluid, and burned them on the stones. I hoped that whatever they prophesied would be voided. When I got home, the drawings were stacked neatly on my coffee table with a note. Nice try, but what's done is done. Don't make me go back on my word. I have no idea how widespread it will be, but it's coming. If you are personally affected by this, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry.